Broadcasting live on the UnitedWest.org AM radio network and simulcasting on DirecTV, iHeartRadio, Roku, and the World Wide Web, this is Enemies of the State with Tom Trento.
Does anybody really believe that the United States should use its massive military power to destroy the nuclear infrastructure of Iran? You bet people believe that. In fact, on our groundbreaking show, Enemies of the State, we feature one such person. Hi, I'm Tom Trento, Director of the United West, and we're privileged to have with us the former commander of the Pacific Fleet, retired Admiral Ace Lions. Ace Lions spent 36 years, distinguished 36 years in the United States military, working afterwards in the intelligence and defense sectors and becoming an expert on Iran's nuclear desire and nuclear diabolical interests. We have him with us today to walk us through, to deconstruct the arguments against a military attack, and to walk us through an understanding as to why the United States should now destroy Iran's nuclear facilities. Let's listen to Admiral Ace Lions. Admiral Lyons, how are you today, sir?
I'm fine. Nice to be with you, Tom.
Good to have you here. We have an hour to seriously work through this. I know you guys do a lot of media all over the place. Usually 5-minute little segments. We have more time to lay down a serious record for our listeners and viewers all over the globe. Dr. Bostom is an author of several books, The Legacy of Jihad, Legacy of Anti-Semitism, Iran's Final Solution for Israel. Prolific writer. He's a physician, prolific writer. Admiral Lyons, so that we give you a little insight to our audience into our subject matter experts. Admiral Lyons' bio reads like this. We're gonna cover all of it, but little bits throughout the show. Damon, if you could read from the second paragraph down a couple of paragraphs just to start us off.
I would be more than honored.
Go ahead.
As an officer of the U.S. Navy for 36 years, most recently as Commander-in-Chief of the U.S. Pacific Fleet, the largest single military command in the world. His initiatives contributed directly to the economic stability and humanitarian understanding in the Pacific and Indian Ocean regions and brought the United States Navy fleet back to China. Also served as senior U.S. military representative to the United Nations. As the Deputy Chief of Naval Operations from '83 to '85, he was principal advisor on all Joint Chiefs of Staff matters and was the father of the Navy Red Cell, an anti-terrorism group comprised of Navy SEALs he established in response to the Marine barracks bombing in Beirut.
Wow. And we're going to read much more, Admiral Lyons. Good to have you here again, sir. Let me ask you a question as we get going. You're a figure in history, as I said, but I've always been curious. Where did the nickname Ace come from?
Ace came from playing football at the Naval Academy. Nothing exotic.
Nothing. That's it. Oh, you played football at the Naval Academy. Okay, that sounds good. I thought there was something more to it, maybe.
Yeah, nothing dramatic like.
Okay.
Would be affiliated. It's a name that my classmates and teammates put on me, and it's stuck for all these years.
All these years.
Nobody knows me by any other name other than Ace.
Than Ace. And what position did you play for the Naval Academy?
Halfback.
Oh, well, man, you know, new information here. Well, you've been retired from the United States Navy for a while, but your skills are still among the top. And we're going to play a little bit of footage because we have some breaking news that we want you to weigh in on. Just a couple of days ago, Admiral Lyons, the Iranian Navy, I don't know if you heard this, the Iranian Navy sunk a United States aircraft carrier in the Persian Gulf. I think it was the USS Paper Mache. But here's some footage you could see of the Iranian Navy attacking a United States aircraft carrier in the Straits of Hormuz. And we're going to let you take a look at, there it is. Do you recognize that ship, sir?
Not really.
Is it flying the U.S. colors?
Well, this is just a sham display. It means absolutely nothing.
Yeah, we saw that, and we're going to dive seriously into the thinking of the Iranians and their military capability in light of their nuclear desires. And we're in the midst of negotiations. This came out before Benjamin Netanyahu, Prime Minister of Israel, appeared in Washington. They wanted to accomplish, the Iranians, two things. One, show their naval prowess against the United States, and they're making threats even after this. And then somehow frighten the world. I don't know what they're doing. Can you help us understand what the Iranian Navy is doing, sinking a paper boat?
Well, let me just say one thing, Tom. The message that has to go back to Iran, it should have went back many years ago. You strike one of our carriers, we will consider that a strike on continental United States, and we will respond with everything in our arsenal. You will be eliminated. And that's the message that should go back.
Interesting message. Mark, can I go back to my seat over here?
And just a second, you can.
Actually,
Okay.
Go ahead.
He might not recognize the ship that was sunk in the Straits, but I think he might remember this ship right here.
Which one? Oh, that one. Hold on.
Let me see if the Admiral can remember this ship right here. I think he will.
Let's see it.
Can you see it? Hull number 697.
Oh, yeah, the Sperry, 697, my old destroyer command.
Was that your boat?
That's my ship.
All right. All right. Well, we're going to take a walk down history lane a little bit. We're gonna go to Dr. Bostom now to lay an intellectual and ideological groundwork for our show today. We're going to come back in a bit to the Admiral, and then we're going to ask the Admiral about certain events that took place in 1979, 1983, 1987, regarding the fact when he was in a command position and the Iranians were starting to reach out into the West. But right now, as we're putting the details of this special together, we have learned that your philosophy, your Weltanschauung, your worldview, dictates your sociology, the way you think about things, and your behavior, the way you act. There's a connection between the way you think and the way you act. In order to understand the way people act, in this case, the way Iranians act, we want to get inside their head. We want to get inside their head philosophically. We want to get inside their head from an imam-mate point of view. We want to get inside their head from the hatred and animus they have for Jews and for the West. At this point, Dr. Bostom, welcome to the show, by the way, our dear friend. The bagels were great that you brought today, too. They were wonderful. But if you could take a few minutes.
They were special Najas bagels.
They were Najas bagels. They were good. If you could take a few minutes and, for our audience, lay down the ideological context through which we can discuss the military concerns we ought to have for Iran.
I'd put it this way, that there are three motivational pillars, and I define them as being jihad, which is this permanent institution of conquering warfare, and it's shared by the Shia and the Sunni alike. And then najas, which is not a comical conception. It's really an impurity-inspired hatred of non-Muslims, and it's uniquely Shiite. So it's both the physical and the spiritual impurity of the infidel, and it's a very dehumanizing concept. And then, of course, there's a unique animus that Iran has towards Jews, and it's based on canonical themes from Islam of Islamic Jew hatred. And so these three pillars, I think, are responsible for the toxic brew that we see really embodied in the current regime. Although antedating this regime by hundreds of years. In other words, the Shiite theocracy that was founded at the beginning of the 16th century exhibited all of the same behaviors that we see right now. There was a period of about 50 years a little over 50 years, from 1925 to 1979, where attempts were made to westernize Iran, secularize Iran. It was a fairly brutal autocracy, but progress was made, particularly for women and certainly the plight of the non-Muslim minorities. But then, effectively, what the 78-79 revolution did is return Iran to its Safavid Qajar legacy, which was the period from basically 1501 to 1925, and add to it this new, even more fervent, to a certain level, messianic jihadism that really seeks to reestablish what was lost to the Shia after the fourth so-called rightly guided caliphate of Ali, where, in other words, the Shia were really supposed to be the avatars of jihad conquest and the leaders of the Muslim world. Khomeini, that was ultimately his goal, to reestablish that. He hasn't done, the regime hasn't done too badly.
Yeah, no.
And getting nuclear weapons would really empower them in a way that would I think impel them forward towards the goal, which is conquest, domination regionally, and then ultimately globally. This is not said in jest when they threaten both Israel and the United States.
Well, just quickly, you saw the footage of the Iranian Navy attacking a U.S. ship. From your work, many years looking inside the head of the Iranian leaders and Iranian ideology and Islamic doctrine, what was their tactical or strategic purpose for attacking a U.S. ship symbolically while they're negotiating for some sort of relief to the sanctions that the world is putting upon them?
Well, there's always dual messaging. There's messaging to the home audience. And by the way, unfortunately, despite 36 years now of this restored fervor, from our perspective, fanaticism in Shiite Iran, the population is about 2/3 in favor of the nuclear program, despite all, even at the period of
Really?
the worst sanctions. Yeah, these are Gallup data from the beginning of 2013, and then data later on in 2013 in May were published that 83% of Iranians still want the Sharia to be the law of the land, and so that's coming in the face of a pretty draconian reinstitution of the Sharia. And yet it retains its popularity, and only about a quarter of the population in the same poll, this was actually a Pew poll with the 83% in favor of the Sharia, 72% did not feel there was any evidence of religious fanaticism in Iran. So now look, on the you can take a glass half empty approach. Country of 75 million, that means 12 to 13 million don't want the Sharia. An even larger number feel that there is evidence of religious fanaticism in Iran, but they're outnumbered, 3 to 4 to 1 in terms of those who are perfectly comfortable, if not with every aspect of the regime, with its overall worldview.
All right, Tom Trento here, your host, Enemies of the State. It's 20 minutes after 4 o'clock. 20 minutes after 4 o'clock right now on our special. And today we have two subject matter experts with us, Dr. Andy Bostom, whom you just heard from. In a minute, we're going to get back to Admiral Ace Lions. And we're exploring and addressing a very serious, very controversial issue. Should the United States, should Israel, should anybody use military operational capability to set back the nuclear program that Iran is obviously going forward with? And the other day we featured an author that has written extensively on this, that it is the time to attack because of certain parameters. Well, we're diving down very deeply in this right now. I'm going to go over to our media world. Admiral Lyons, the other day, about a week or two ago, you spoke at a very unique summit that, Frank Gaffney, the president of Center for Security Policy, put together. He got 20-something people in D.C. addressing this issue. You 3 minutes of your presentation caught fire and went around the world virally. We're going to play that right now. Actually, I want Damon to read another section of the Admiral's bio so people understand who he is, what's going on. And we are here on WSBR Radio, broadcasting out of Boca Raton. We're on high frequency signal, HFS, in Tampa Bay, 1010 on your radio. We're all over the world on the UnitedWest.org, TeaPartyCommunity.org, sections of our show on BreitbartTV.com. Right now, Damon, a little bit more about the Admiral.
Admiral Lyons was also...
Try again?
Admiral Lyons was also commander of the U.S. Second Fleet and commander of the NATO Striking Fleet, which were the principal fleets for implementing the maritime strategy. Admiral Lyons has represented U.S. interests with military and civilian leadership worldwide, including China, Japan, and other Pacific Rim countries, the European continent, and Russia. As fleet commander, he managed a budget of over $5 billion and controlled a force of over 250,000 personnel.
Wow.
Key assignments preceding flag rank included Chief of Staff, Commander Carrier Group 4, Commanding Officer the USS Richmond K. Turner, and Commanding Officer of the USS Charles S. Sperry, which we just showed earlier. He's been recognized for his distinguished service by the United States and several foreign governments. He is a graduate of the U.S. Naval Academy and has received postgraduate degrees from the U.S. Naval War College and the U.S. National Defense University.
And he played halfback at the Naval Academy. That's right.
And plus, I don't think he commanded a fleet of fishing boats and tourist helicopters to attack a wooden mock-up of an aircraft carrier.
Yeah, the rest of that Iranian naval attack footage has tourist helicopters firing missiles and center console fishing boats sinking an aircraft carrier. Admiral Lyons, look, you had a distinguished 36-year career. You paid your dues. You served your country. You retired some years ago. Why don't you just go gardening someplace? Why are you still fighting these battles?
Well, I have to tell you, Tom, and your audience, I got to say, never in my lifetime did I believe I would see this great country being taken down and withdrawn from our world leadership role by our own administration. And I cannot sit by idly and watch it happen without trying to change the negative course that this administration is on.
All right, on that note, let's watch these fascinating 3 minutes recorded just a couple of weeks ago, and then we're going to have the Admiral comment on some of this information. Here we go.
Well, thank you, Frank. Sorry I missed the earlier presentations due to my 3-hour and 20-minute commute this morning. But, as a number of you heard me say before, we've had many opportunities to change the course of history. And it hasn't mattered whether it's been a Republican or Democratic administration. We failed every one of them, starting with Carter, with the takeover of our embassy. We could have cut off Khomeini and his Islamic fundamentalism at the knees. We were going to take Carg Island, and he rejected it. We could have walked in. The next time was the Marine barracks bombing. And you all probably wonder why we never responded. I won't go into the long detail, but the guy that sabotaged the strike, and I'm glad you're all sitting down, was the Secretary of Defense. Not once, but twice. Reagan approved, the French wanted to do a combined strike, and Reagan approved it, and Weinberger wouldn't issue the order. I have personally talked to George Shultz and Bud McFarlane. They told me they pleaded with him, and he wouldn't do it. You have to say, who the hell got to him, or what got to him? I've never been able to get an answer on that. In the Gulf Tanker War in '87, we were going to bring down the Khomeini regime. You know, and the guy that sabotaged, I had Brief Weinberger at my headquarters at Pearl Harbor that summer. This was going to be in August of '87. And the one who undercut us the most was our own chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Crow, at the time. You know, if you go forward and you look at, you know, we shot down by accident that Iranian civilian airliner a few months later. And what did Khomeini do? He said, I'm drinking from the chalice of poison. And he said, I have to make a truce with Saddam Hussein because the Americans have shown they're coming in on Iraq's side. Well, think of what the hell we could have done had we executed the strike we wanted to do in August of '87. You know, we all say we have to identify the threat. Well, I think the one who identified it the best was Erdogan from Turkey, when he said, Islam is Islam. There are no modifiers. Democracy is the train we ride to our ultimate objective. He couldn't have said it any plainer. And until you recognize that Islam is a political movement masquerading as a religion, you're never going to come to grips with it. And as far as a strategy, let me just conclude one thing. And as I just had in my latest op-ed, the Obama administration has a strategy. It's very simple. Any thinking American should be able to grasp it. It's anti-American, anti-Western, it's pro-Islamic, it's pro-Iranian, and pro-Muslim Brotherhood. And with that, I'll yield the mic.
Thank you, sir. You said more in 3 minutes there than most of the guys up on the Hill in the House and the Senate have said in a lifetime. Admiral, where were you on November 4, 1979, when the embassy was taken over by the Iranians?
Affairs, Joint Chiefs of Staff. And when they took over the embassy, the chairman called me up and said, what can we do? What options do we have? And I said, well, I'll tell you what we're going to do. We're going to take Carg Island. We could have walked in. My plan was to walk in with Navy SEAL. I had been to Carg. I was probably the only one in the building that had ever been to Carg Island. In fact, I was there with my destroyer, Charles S. Berry, in 1967 time frame. But I knew the island, knew what we could do, and I was going to give Khomeini 24 hours to get out of the embassy, return our diplomats, or he was going to have the biggest ashtray in the Middle East.
All right, hang on one second. Let's get the geography on the screen because this is critically important.
Yeah, go back.
Let's do a larger map of the area. Now, Carg Island, K-H-A-R-G, Carg Island, is off the coast of Iran. There it is there. We have an aerial shot, and Iran is to the east, and the red dot in the center is a small island, Carg Island, really deeply in the Persian Gulf. I mean, it's almost like a cul-de-sac in there. Now, let's take a minute, Admiral, because I've heard you mention we were going to take it. That does not look like a fun place to have a battle with that, you know, one way out, one way in kind of situation. What were the operational plans back then to take over that island?
Well, we were going to bring in our Navy SEALs, and you know, back in those days, this was this was their main oil exporting depot. I mean, it was their lifeline, their economic lifeline. Everything else paled in comparison to it. And we were going to come in, the basic, all the controls and the engineering and the facilities to control the flow and everything else is in a specific location which we were going to take.
All right, so you go in, you take control of it, and you cut some of the economic resources to them. The other side always has a dog in the fight. What was your anticipation of what Khomeini would do at that point in response to your seizing?
Well, that was a pretty fragile regime at that time. This was in, they're still in a transition from trying to firm up their control and so forth. And I felt that we would have, this is, again, you're not telegraphing what you're doing. This would have been something totally unusual, and they would not have had a plan, I believe, to counter it.
All right, well, let's assume for the sake of this discussion, you did it, you took over the island, and you put pressure on the regime. They release the 50-something, 56 hostages. What happens next geopolitically?
Well, I think, you can come up with several scenarios there, but the main one, the aura, if you will, of Islamic fundamentalism was basically cut off at the knees. In fact, what people don't understand, the Shah of Iran had his problems. But, I think Roosevelt used to say it best when he described Somosas in Nicaragua. Somoza, he said, he was an SOB, but he was our SOB. And in the Persian Gulf, Iran really represented our security policy in the Gulf. We only had a few resources there in those days, nothing like today. And so they were the underpinning for our national security objectives in the Persian Gulf. So when you lost that, it really was a dramatic change. And this was not well appreciated, I can tell you, by the Carter administration. I was the JCS rep on the Iranian task force, of which there were 48 members. And I was the only one supporting the Shah because from the national security aspect. It was really an unfortunate situation because I think much of what we're seeing today, and again, as you mentioned earlier, this was a defining moment where we had an opportunity to change the course of history, and we failed when President Carter rejected it out of hand and went ahead with his ill-fated rescue attempt.
All right, and let me ask Dr. Bostom, and Admiral, while I'm asking him a question, if you can reposition yourself a little bit, you're getting, the chair's getting close to the camera, we're losing part of your face. Dr. Bostom, the Admiral just laid out a very interesting historic analogy, or a historic situation. Is it analogous to today, do you think? A situation where we have an opportunity to stop Iran with military force and send a signal, or is that a fool's errand?
Absolutely, and the policy that Ace was trying to uphold at that point was based on two pillars, which was the Shah and Saudi Arabia. Now you can argue a little bit about the latter in terms of its ongoing funding of global jihadism, but at least at that point there was an equally, some would say, more powerful threat from Soviet communism, and both the Shah and the Saudis were virulently anti-communist. And so that they did form two pillars that were effective in thwarting, to some extent, communist inroads in the Middle East. Obama is recreating the two pillars in an era that's already rampant with jihadism by the two leading avatars of jihadism. The Saudis consistently, they've always been that way, and now the reestablishment of this Shiite theocratic state in Iran, when it is back to fomenting jihadism. It's absolutely absurd, and so now forces that may have transiently been in some sense promoting stability are now aggressively promoting jihadism, both Sunni forms and Shiite forms, and they are now being perversely put forth as promoters of stability. It's absolutely insane.
All right, well, let's go to a battle that took place in 1988. I think it was April 18th, 1988. 9-hour battle. We're going to ask the Admiral about this in the tanker Gulf Wars. That's when, for those of you who are historian buffs, that's when about a year earlier, the USS Stark was hit by Saddam Hussein, supposedly with an Exocet missile, killed several people, wounded many on the ship, and the battle started in the Persian Gulf over the flow of tankers. About a year later, 1988, April, there was a 9-hour battle. Right now it is 37 minutes after the hour, though, for those of you who have to leave us. Tom Trento, your host, Enemies of the State, 2 experts with us, Admiral Ace Lions, former commander of the Pacific Fleet, retired now, still involved in the fight, folks, every minute of every day, and Dr. Andy Bostom, a medical physician who happens to be an expert on Islamic ideology. Our objective today, asking the question, is military force an anachronism, something that in this new global world is irrelevant, or should military force be a serious option and in fact be used to stop a diabolical nation whose historic precedent is the control, and destruction? Those are the questions we're raising. Admiral, back in April 1988, there was a 9-hour naval battle between the U.S. Navy and the Iranian Navy. Tell us how that turned out.
Well, I think, before there were several skirmishes. I wouldn't call it a battle. It was, I wouldn't doctor it up to that level, since we had sufficient resources, and what we did essentially is sunk an Iranian ship that was laying mines and so forth in the Gulf. We also shot up a couple of unarmed oil platforms after we took off the civilian personnel that was aboard those oil platforms, because we didn't, out of humanitarian considerations. Of course, all of this I felt was pure nonsense. That's not the way you send the message to the recognized world's leader in state-sponsored terrorism.
Right now, for our audience, for our listeners, viewers, to give a sense of proportionality and capabilities, Iran has demonstrated last week their naval capability, their naval prowess, their strength. Supposedly, they have a new weapon they unveiled last week, launched from a sub. How would you compare the two navies? Can they even be compared? And if there were a Navy battle between the United States and Iran, what would that look like?
Well, Tom, this is, what would it look like? It depends. You never telegraph what you're going to do. You, as the commander, you always want to retain the initiative. So the things you do, you always have to keep your enemy off guard and be unpredictable. So, to go into various scenarios, how I would have run it, what I would do, and so forth. I'm not going to give you those details, because some of them may be very relevant to current plans. However, in my view, the only way to ensure that Iran does not get a nuclear weapon capability, and I've got to tell your audience this, I've come across some information that Iran actually bought 4 warheads from Kazakhstan in 1992. I'm also told they were stored at a military base, Lazaran, which is northeast of Tehran. And as you recall, just yesterday, it was announced that another underground secret uranium enrichment site has been discovered or reported to be discovered at that same location northeast of Tehran. And this is a site that the International Atomic Energy Agency had no knowledge of. So here you go again. How do you, how can you enter into any type of agreement with the world's leading sponsor of terrorism and the fact that this nation, Iran, has caused the loss of life of thousands of Americans? And let's not forget, your audience should never forget, that it was the key military training and support that they provided to the 9/11 hijackers that permitted them to carry out that attack successfully. And they were found, Judge Daniels in the New York District Court in 2011 found Iran guilty. And again, it's another one of these cases. What does it take for this great nation to be able to stand up and respond to these challenges? As of this point, we've failed to do so.
And do you, well, here's the interesting question. Well, thanks for still being the Admiral, Dr. Bostom. The Admiral, still the Admiral. He won't tell us what the plans are, what he thinks the plans may be. That's okay. I think I could say this, that the United States Navy is a superior fighting force to the Iranian Navy. No one wants to use these assets, but this
that one little attack group that's on the screen, Tom, is more than the whole of the Iranian Navy, by the way. So there's, you know, it's Little League going against the NFL. It really is.
And nobody wants to get in these situations, but the United States has demonstrated for 237 years that it fights wars to bring peace around, not to conquer territories and extend an empire. It fights benevolently for others. This is what we've been doing. And when this country keeps pushing to become a regional controller, and their eyes now, they have Yemen, their eyes are on the northeastern oil fields of Saudi Arabia. They get their hands on that, fait accompli. So it's a very, very bad situation. Gentlemen, today we're discussing whether or not it's time to bomb Iran. I'm going to go sit down here for a minute. We're going to discuss that in the remaining moments we have.
I'd like to ask you, Admiral,
sure, let's open it up for a little discussion. Sure.
Admiral, this is Mark Campbell, Communications Director, and I was in the Navy for 4 years. Thank you for your service, and I think you were actually my Admiral at one time. So, but I appreciate it. Thank you, sir. But my question is, if Iran does attack the U.S. naval fleet, are they launch a nuclear bomb? Are they show something directly, egregious towards the Western powers? What are our options? Is blocking the Strait of Hormuz a good option, and putting a complete blockade around Iran without actually physically attacking Iran? Is that a good solution or not?
Well, there's a lot of ways to respond, and of course your question is somewhat hypothetical, and we have various means, and I think I said it early on. Should Iran attack our forces, our carriers specifically, they have to understand that we would consider such an attack as a direct attack on the United States, and that we would respond with everything in our military capability. So, does that mean that they wouldn't attempt it? Let's face it, Iran invented chess 2,500 years ago, and they always have various plans. You have to really think beyond the obvious. But I am comfortable that the military, has a number of plans and options that would be appropriate should any act be taken as you described by Iran.
Well, let me do a real quick follow-up. Is regime change our only option with Iran? Is there any other option? Because I personally don't see it, because I know they're hell-bent on getting a nuclear weapon, and I don't think anything's going to stop them.
Let's have Dr. Bostom. He's been thinking that one through for a long time. Why don't you take that first, the issue of regime change?
I don't think that there's a viable alternative in terms of an organized movement that is going to change Iran's worldview. If you look at the much lionized Green movement and its ideologues, particularly the political leader Mousavi and the late spiritual leader Ayatollah Montazeri, Mousavi was part of the Khomeini clique that came to power. Montazeri was an ideologue back then. Their views are the same. Their tactics are different. The mass of the Iranian people, unfortunately, despite this regime, have not changed dramatically. There's no objective evidence of that, at least. So that I think that the only solution, and it's a temporizing one, or perhaps not, is a military destruction of infrastructure. And I know you're going to be speaking to Dr. Kronig, but Dr. Kronig has pointed out that whenever the military option has been exercised to preempt a nuclear program, it's actually been quite successful. None of these countries that have been preempted thus far, going all the way back to Nazi Germany, have in fact developed nuclear programs. He gives 4 historical examples, including Iran itself in its war with Iraq, obviously, Syria most recently, and Nazi Germany. None of these countries to date have developed a nuclear program after being preempted. And so I think that that's the precedent. And there's some very interesting data I'd like to share with you from the end of November, after the extension of negotiations was announced. These are 1,800 Americans, and they were asked about the negotiations, etc. And 85% of Americans do not believe Iranians' assertions that their nuclear program is peaceful. 81% do not believe the current government in Iran can be trusted to keep agreements. And 69% of Americans oppose any negotiated agreement leaving Iran with nuclear capabilities. That to me suggests that with the appropriate regime change where it's needed, here in the United States, a brave leader could muster support for an attack on Iran.
Wow. Here we are, folks, at 48 minutes after the hour, 48 minutes after 4 o'clock. Tom Trento, your host, Enemies of the State, name of the show. We're broadcasting live, WSBR Radio, 740 AM on your dial out of Boca Raton, 1010 on your dial out of Tampa Bay, all over the world out of the internet, theunitedwest.org. And the issue today is whether or not we've seen over the past few days a tremendous amount of commotion and discussion and debate. Benjamin Netanyahu recently was speaking at Congress. We've seen all of this, and there is a developing mindset by academics, by military-minded people, by regular grassroots Americans and Israelis, that indeed what Dr. Bostom just mentioned, a very targeted, very specific military operation to destroy the nuclear infrastructure of Iran seems to be the only option left on the table to prohibit Iran from getting nuclear capability. And the argument has been that the President Obama, says these words, "I will prevent them from getting the bomb," but his policies and his actions, the President and his administration, are containment policies and actions. Admiral Lyons, should we work to prohibit Iran from getting a bomb, contain, and if you say prohibit, should we use military force, and if we should, when?
Well, let me say, Tom, I've been trying to launch a strike against Iran for over 35 years. To me, there is no other option when you're dealing with this evil regime. And make no mistake, it's an evil regime with a 7th century mentality wrapped up in their Islamic fundamentalism. And the only sure way that we can prevent Iran from getting a nuclear weapon capability is through a military strike. There's no such thing as entering into any type of agreement that we would expect Iran to live up to. Why would you spend billions of dollars to put your facilities underground into sides of mountain if this was a peaceful program? And in fact, time and time again, we find where Iran continues to cheat and deny the IAEA access to their key facilities. There's no way you can verify what their program is or what it is not. So the only sure way, and for those who say, well, it will only buy us 2 years, let me tell you, I'll take those 2 years, and if they go to build it up again, we'll take it out again.
I know. It's for 35 years he's been preaching this, and
it makes so much sense. I mean, and look, nobody likes fighting and all of that stuff unless it's obviously necessary. And I've been persuaded a while back that it was necessary. Dr. Bostom, where do you stand on all of this?
Do we have the image of the unclean that we might be able to show, guys?
Oh yeah, I can pull that up.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
This is from a tweet that the supreme leader of Iran put out November 21st of 2013. It epitomizes this doctrine that I mentioned in passing, najis, where the infidel, in this case Israel, but it applies really not just to Jews, to all non-Muslims, are considered unclean dogs. And when you dehumanize people the way non-Muslims in Iran were dehumanized for centuries of theocratic Shiite rule in such a fashion, it's not a great leap to think that perhaps you could eliminate such people without batting an eyelash.
Well, and
I think that the American public has to understand the doctrine of najis. It begins with an N, just like nukes. We can put them together in an alliteration, and perhaps they'll begin to understand that this kind of threat is not something to be dismissive about, as both the past two administrations have been. You know, Bush 2 denied even the rather feckless Olmert when he was feeling his oats after he'd attacked Syria. He wanted to attack Iran's nuclear sites at that point, and Bush denied him flyover rights over Iraq because it might undo the great gains of the surge, as was revealed in former Secretary of Defense Gates's memoir. So this has been a bipartisan failure of imagination, and of course Admiral Lyons can tell us how far back this goes.
Sure, yeah.
But a society, a regime that can consider the other to be unclean dogs is not to be trusted with nuclear weapons.
And there's so many levels where an attack is necessary, not just as the Admiral has laid out from the secret desire and secret processes Iran has been following, from the IAEA hiding this. Another site was just discovered a couple of days ago. They're cheating, all of that. And if it is a benevolent, medical, productive electricity program, why are you hiding all this stuff from everybody?
About as benevolent as the Nazis, Tom. It really is. I mean, the same parallel Andy was talking about, when you dehumanize people, when you take them to the next level, the same thing happened with Germany. This is a German propaganda flyer equating Jews to rats.
Show the flyer that we're talking about. Let's put that up.
That's what the Nazis did.
No, not that. That's a good one too. But where's the one that Andy had regarding?
Well, that's what I was talking about earlier.
Tweet.
And here's Khomeini's tweet.
That one.
That one.
Yeah. Take a look at it. Explain this real fast, Andy.
Well, essentially, unclean is najis. Dogs are particularly najis. In other words, dogs are equivalent to pigs in Iranian Shiite theology. And the street language epithets hurled at Jews and Armenians and Zoroastrians would call them Jew dogs, Armeni dogs, Zoroastrian dogs. So this is very serious when an entire nation is cast as an unclean dog. The day before that tweet went out, he had specifically, Khamenei, in a speech to the Basji militia, a gathering of about 50,000 of them, had specifically referred to Netanyahu as an unclean rabid dog. The next day, to double down on it, he put out this tweet, which was just shown, where the entire nation of Israel was referred to as unclean.
You
dogs.
also included another example of Najis with Montazeri.
Oh yes, yes. So this is a real life example. Now Montazeri was lionized until his death in December of 2009 as the moderate face of the Green Movement, as the spiritual godfather of the Green Movement. And here he's refusing to shake the hand of an Iranian Jew before he's about to do his salat, his prayers, because that would make him unclean. So this is not just in action.
Unbelievable, ladies and gentlemen. Tom Trento, 57 minutes after the hour, just a couple of minutes left. And what we've done today, we've addressed the issue. Is it time to bomb Iran? And it looks like the three of us say yes, it is. And we don't dismiss that in a carefree manner. Hang on one second. What do you have?
Well, I just want to ask, we have our imam here who hasn't commented at all today.
No, he's a little quiet today.
You don't want to bring him in?
No, he's a little quiet.
He's fasting.
He's fasting, yeah. No, we, where was I going with all that stuff? The issue that we addressed is a time to bomb Iran. Very, very serious issue. And we've only looked at operationally the fact that the Iranians have a stealth program. They profess and proclaim that it's going to be a benign program for electricity and for power, yet they hide everything. That's a clue. We see the ideology behind the regime. We see the data behind the regime, which simply says these folks are going to be like this for a while. So the next regime that comes internally from Iran is going to carry the same nuclear capabilities and desires. They want the Persian bomb. The Sunnis have a bomb. The Persians, the Shias want their bomb. Israel has shown us at Osirik in June of 1981, Operation Oprah, that to knock out these facilities, do set countries back. They did it in 2007. Somebody did it in 2007 in Syria. So maybe it is time for the United States to indeed attack Iran and set back their program, as the Admiral says, 1 or 2 years every single time. Just keep knocking them over. Will there be blowback? Yeah. And we have to address that.
Can I say something?
Yes, you could take the final word here. We got about a minute and a half left. All yours, Admiral.
Let's face facts. Iran's oil reserve, conservatively, will last at least another 250 years.
Wow.
So don't stand up. Nobody should swallow this, that they need an alternative source of energy. This is pure nonsense. And fundamental to the regime's existence is their hatred of the great Satan, which is the United States, and their hatred of the little Satan, which is Israel. They've announced they're going to take out Israel at their first opportunity, and once they've accomplished that, they'll try to figure out how to take out South. So, you know, when you have an ideologue such as the Ayatollah Khomeini and his evil regime, believe him. Take the initiative. Don't let it happen.
All right. On that note, we've got to go. I know we're out of time right now. But the bottom line, as the Admiral just says, take these people for their word. We're going to do more work on this, obviously. We've got to mobilize America and take a stand. Gentlemen, Dr. Andy Bostom, thank you very, very much for working with us today. Admiral, always good to see you. You take care. And we'll be back to you in the future to get more of your insight and your historic perspective and your grit, your true American grit. We love you, sir, and thank you for your work. You take care now. Bye, everybody. See you tomorrow.
Thanks for having me, Tom.